Okay, so you ever find a cool seashell on the beach and think you know exactly what it is? Well, today we're going to talk about a creature that is a total master of disguise, a survivor from the ancient oceans that you've probably mistaken for something else your entire life. Yep, we're diving into the phylum Brachiopoda.
So picture this. You're walking on the beach, you glance down, and there it is, a fossil with two shells hinged together. The first thing that pops into your head is, awesome, a clam, right? I mean, it seems pretty obvious.
But you know, in paleontology, the easy answer isn't always the right one. That two-shelled fossil, it might not be a clam at all. It could actually be something way, way older, a member of a group that literally used to rule the seas. And that gets us right into our first section. We're about to unravel this whole case of mistaken identity and meet the ocean's greatest imposter. So on one side, you got the creatures you already know, right? The bivalves, your clams, your oysters, your mussels. That's what most people assume they're looking at. But on the other side, what you might actually be holding is a brachiopod, a totally different kind of animal.
Okay, so what in the world is this thing? It's time we properly introduce the star of today's explainer. Well, according to our paleontology sources, brachiopods are basically shelled organisms that spend their lives stuck to the seafloor, and they eat by filtering tiny bits of food out of the water. Sounds a whole lot like a clam so far, doesn't it?
Let's break that down real quick. So, just like bivalves, they've got two shells. Scientists call them valves. They're also sessile, which is just a fancy word that means they're fixed in one spot, attached to the ocean bottom. And they're filter feeders, constantly sucking in water to grab a meal. The similarities are definitely there, but the real difference, it's all in the details.
And this brings us to the single most important clue for telling them apart. This is the big aha moment. This is the one trick that paleontologists use to solve this identity crisis every single time. Which leads to the obvious question, right? If they both have two shells and pretty much the same lifestyle, what's the big deal? Where's the giveaway? How can you really tell if you found a clam or its ancient look-alike? The whole secret comes down to one word: symmetry. Specifically, bilateral symmetry. Now that's just a scientific way of saying you can split something down the middle and get two identical mirror-imaged halves. You know, like a butterfly. But where you draw that line, that changes everything. And here it is, the key difference. For a brachiopod, that line of symmetry runs right down the middle of each shell, so its left and right sides are perfect mirror images. But for a bivalve, like a clam, the line of symmetry runs between the two shells. This means its top shell and its bottom shell are mirror images of each other.
So here's the absolute biggest takeaway. Because a brachiopod is symmetrical from left to right, its top and bottom shells don't actually have to match. And in fact, they're almost always different sizes, different shapes. Meanwhile, a bivalve's two shells are usually identical. That's it. That's the secret to telling them apart. Now that we know how to spot one, let's take a trip back in time. Because these things aren't just some weird oddity, they are actual relics from a time when they were the undisputed rulers of the oceans.
As one of our sources puts it so well, brachiopods were very abundant during the Paleozoic era, but they're fairly rare today. It's hard to imagine, but they were once one of the most common animals in the entire sea.
And this timeline just drives that point home. During the Paleozoic, which was roughly 541 to 252 million years ago, brachiopods were everywhere. Seriously, finding their fossils from this time is super common. But today, they're just a few survivors, clinging on in the deep oceans, basically a ghost of their former empire.
And you know, like any great empire, the brachiopods weren't all the same. They had their own internal diversity that paleontologists are still fascinated with today.
So, to make sense of this huge fossil record, scientists have basically sorted the thousands of brachiopod species we know about into two main categories or classes. These classes are called articula and inarticula, and it really just comes down to how their shells are hinged together. The articulate have this cool little tooth and socket hinge, but the inarticula are just held together by muscles. It's these tiny details that help paleontologists trace the family tree of this incredible ancient phylum.
So why does any of this matter? Well, because brachiopods were so widespread for so long, and because different types lived at different times, they actually work like little markers in the rock layers. For geologists, finding a certain type of brachiopod fossil is like finding a date stamp, helping them literally read the history of our planet, layer by layer.
So just remember this the next time you're on a beach and you find a two-shelled fossil. Take a closer look. That simple clam
might not be a climb at all. It could be a brachiopod, a true survivor from a lost kingdom, carrying secrets from hundreds of millions of years ago.
So, what do you think? Did any of that surprise you? Was there anything about brachiopods that you still find a little confusing? Let us know. And more importantly, tell us what ancient creature we should tackle next. Drop all your questions and requests right there in the comments below.